Hey everybody, my name is Joshua Lengfelder. I'm the CEO of Randonautica, or a co-founder of Randonautica and CEO of Randonauts Co. We developed an app that sends you random places. I was raised in a theater, so that meant my first job was being pulled out of second grade and being made to be the boy and waiting for Godot in a professional production. And I've experience in anthropology and electronic media and communications, and that's when when I was in college learning about electronic media and communications, that's when I really kind of started learning my path and like researching underutilized technologies and kind of creating communities around them. And so that's kind of what I do. I'm kind of a natural born leader and can kind of create communities around underutilized technology or philosophies, basically. And my good friend Polly here is with me.
And you're ready for me to talk?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out, everyone. It's great to see you here. And my name is Polly Washburn, and I am a time traveler. And back in the day, I had a pretty hippie childhood. My dad was a physician who was kind of ahead of his time on the mind-body connection. And my mom was a peace activist. And then I went to a hippy-dippy college called Oberlin. And they were all about doing good in the world. So I had this kind of movement behind me to get out there and do something. So I've spent a lot of time with nonprofits and helping them, mainly using tech. But I've also spent time in journalism and marketing, including in the cannabis industry, which I would also see as people trying to make the world a little different than it is. And I've also been a film producer, so bringing together creative teams, problem solvers to tell stories. I like seeing the world through the lens of other cultures. That's really important to me. So I've traveled the world. I'm a dual citizen. I've lived in 5 different countries. I've spent time in a couple dozen more. That's something that is exciting to me. I've only been back in the US for about 3 weeks now from about 6 months living overseas. So still adjusting.
Yeah. We were having meetings back and forth, and you were changing the country every week.
Yeah. Where's Polly? So I'm also a Reiki practitioner, so I'm definitely open to the woo-woo, if you will, or the idea that there's more going on and possible in the universe than most of us are aware of or open ourselves up to. And I'm old enough that I grew up going to the Star Wars movies in person. And the Force, or I think Lucas maybe had one letter wrong, the source, a positive energy source in the universe is something that has been on my mind for a long time. I'm a practicer of Quakerism and Buddhism, so mindfulness, kindness, peace, equity, these are all values that I hold dear. And I'm interested in organizations and individuals that, like Yoda, are looking to elevate us as human beings mentally, energetically, or just increasing quality of life, on whatever level that is. So I'm always on the lookout for people doing interesting things in the world. And so when I was introduced to Josh here, I was intrigued to hear about Randonautica. And I'm going to let him tell us more about that.
Yeah, so like the intentions between our projects were kind of similar, but the execution was a lot different. So if we go to the next slide, I think, the Randonauts experiment started as just a group of hobbyists playing with different forms of randomness. And basically, it started with someone sending out a random location to 60,000 people, and people would just report these weird things happening at these random locations. And even years later, after they got the random coordinate, and they didn't know why they got it or anything, so we kind of like hypothesized that there may be a time kind of component, because these random locations were sent years before. And even years after they were sent, people were reporting that still weird things were happening at this.
Do you want to show the video?
Yeah, sure. So typical Randonaut experience, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube because it's like a hyper real thing, but this is like a typical Randonaut experience. I would say it's like good.
All right, so we decided to do the Randonautica app tonight, and one of the signs the app's working is like if you see an owl or anything like, out of the ordinary, and I thought it was complete bullshit. So we started driving. It's like 1.5 miles away where it told us to go. It was on High Street, so I documented that obviously. And it pulls up. We pull up to a park, okay? And we went to where the picture was. Here it is. That pole, that's an owl. A fucking owl. I've never seen an owl in the 22 years I've lived here, right? So I'm freaking out right now. There it is flying away. It was a real owl. There's Nico, he's freaking out. There's Cameron, she's freaking out. I have goosebumps. There's Megan, she wanted to leave. Yeah, so we decided to go on a little walk, but it was too much for us, so we had to leave. Yep.
Yeah. So that's like a really good example of like what a true Randonaut journey is going to look like. Like once we hit about 1 million users, it became kind of hard to control what the actual community of Randonauts couldn't keep up with us going viral in beta and getting 20 million downloads in a few months. So like back to the start of it, it was based on this basically Princeton Engineering Research Lab experiment where you make your intention for that white line to go above that green line. And so, can we go to the next slide? Basically, we took that idea and said, what if we use that idea of consciousness influencing this graph and put it in a geospatial algorithm? So what you see on the right is kind of a picture of a rudimentary algorithm we use to kind of increase the bias consciousness creates on the random number generator. It acts as a biofeedback device. It's actually your brain that's doing the work, and our app just kind of shows where you have affected it, hypothetically. Now, this is very rudimentary. This is a look at our app. One of the biggest things about our app is like getting out of the stasis field. So the stasis field is a complex set of causal connections that keep you like in your routine. Some of these things you can't change, like where you were born or like who you were, born with or where you were born, but some things you can change. And so like a lot of Randonautica's initial intentions were about like this breaking determinism and like taking control of the agency of your life by being able to inject some randomness, and like that kind of like creates a cascade of changes and possibilities. So we were always interested in increasing your frame of reference of holistic reality and seeing more of reality, more of what's out there. Increasing the possibility of what's possible, basically. So go to the next one. So this is like an example of a mind-bending experience where a guy went on a job interview, and then Randonautica took him to the country club where he actually interviewed. And while he was on his way to the random location, which was the place he interviewed, he got a phone call from the manager of the country club asking him to interview later that week. So he said his mind was blown. So that's definitely one of the freakiest randonauting experiences. So that's one of the reasons why people are so attracted to going to random places. And there's actually a study published in Nature Neuroscience, as you can see, that suggests that going to novel geographic places can actually increase wellness and happiness in your life. So the first Randonaut trip I took after the Garden of Inspiration was this drum. I found this drum in the middle of Dallas. And so like, that's a very novel thing. And that's kind of when the community, they were at first kind of just watching what we were doing. And once I found that drum, it kind of like accelerated things. People were like, okay, we need to get out there and see what is in these, weird liminal spaces. So go to the next one. So and this is another one where, so me and my friend, so you're supposed to set an intention when you go to randonauting. It's about something you want to find. So we were just talking about, we didn't even set our intention. We were just talking about giant skeletons because we were watching Ancient Aliens or whatever on History Channel. And the point was directly in the water in front of that guy. So I walked up to him and he was meditating. And I asked him if he knew about like the studies done on meditation affecting random number generators. He said yes. And the next thing out of his mouth was, do you see that wall over there? Apparently there are giant skeletons buried in that wall. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but there is actually a legend about it in that area. So it's a very interesting coincidence. And so like another one was like this lady went randonauting and found an owl, and she actually rehabilitated it and actually healed it and let it go. And on the right, you have a guy with all these welcome signs. This is like one of my favorite experiences. So he was writing a speech for something, and he asked for a sign for the universe, and then all of a sudden, knock on the door, it's a randonaut, and they explained it. They were led there by a quantum random number generator, and since there were so many welcome signs, they figured they'd knock on the door, and he took it as a sign from the universe and got inspired. So that's a very interesting one. Go to the next one. So as I met Polly, well, we kind of found that although our apps were, a lot different in a lot of ways, mainly in like the data accumulation, we had some similarities. So if you want to talk about Time Machine.
I would love to talk about Time Machine. Thanks, Josh. And so a couple years ago, Dr. Julia Mossbridge of the Institute for Love and Time, or TILT, approached me to see if I'd be interested in working on a project that they were pitching to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And the project was described as having the goal of increasing health, hope, and well-being by gradually extending time horizons for those who can most benefit from that expansion. So I wasn't exactly sure what that meant, but it sounded pretty cool, and I like Julia a lot, so I thought anything she was doing would be cool. So I took on the role of project manager and offered some software development support and guidance, and joined the team, which you can see here. And they're all here today, actually. Feel free to wave. Dr. Julia Mossbridge. I lied, Dr. Mike Sapiro is not here. Amber Williams is our graphic designer and UX expert. And Carrie Johnson is our lead developer. And so we all got together and decided to make this crazy thing. Our hope was to have the opportunity to have a kind of a co-created app with iterative, inclusive design process and focus groups. But due to COVID, we had to do more of a online orientation. So Mike there led a beautiful meditation on getting in touch with your past self and your future self, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Yeah, we had to kind of change up things due to COVID. So what does it mean to extend time horizons? That's what this slide is attempting to tell us. You can see here I've built a little timeline of my life and haircuts over the years. And you can think of your life, right, as moments in time and snapshots in time. And back in the day, we didn't document our lives every single day like we do now, so there was a little more time between moments. But we can also think of our lives in this expression of a long body, which to me means that we have a body that we are connected to, an existence that we're connected to throughout our whole existence, right? So I'm still connected to my past selves, and I'm also connected to my future self. Getting to learn this tool or this concept was really beautiful during the first days of COVID, because I don't know if you remember, but we were kind of freaked out. Am I going to even survive this? Literally was, in a lot of people's heads. And I had a chat with my future self, and she said, yep, you're going to survive this, and you're going to travel again. As I mentioned, travel is really important to me. She said, I will meet you in a couple of years in a giant city that's not in North America with big, beautiful buildings. And I'm like, Singapore, cool, I will meet you there. It was not Singapore, it was Dubai, where I was a few weeks ago for the World Expo. But I had a moment when I was looking out at a river, and I saw the buildings, and it was like, okay, I made the date, you set a date for me, and I made it here with you. So I was, I'm shaking now just thinking about it. It is a beautiful technology and a tool to teach people, and we wanted to give it to people because when you can expand your time horizon, it's called having a strong future orientation. So if you're able to habitually plan for a positive future, then that leads to positive outcomes in education, career, and health. And you can, the item on the bottom there is supposed to be, so one time horizon is, am I going to survive this talk today? Yes, cool, that's, 45 minutes, I got it. That's a pretty short time horizon. Then, what's tomorrow? Am I going to survive South by Southwest? Hopefully, yes. Planning out a year from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now. But there's a gap. If you have experienced poverty, trauma, addiction, abuse, and or incarceration, you're going to have a weaker future orientation. You're just not able to see that there's going to be a positive future for yourself, and you're not able to connect to kind of a successful, wise future version of yourself. And you can do therapy to improve this, one-on-one therapy, doing time travel narration, and this is meant to represent, so hope is your ability to think, okay, I'm experiencing something pretty traumatic right now, but I believe that my well-being will stay on that green track up there. Despite whatever's happening in my actual life, I can kind of get myself out of that and think about my well-being. And this, of course, is hard to scale. It's hard to scale a technology that involves one-on-one therapy. So we thought, what if we could do a web app and use technology to scale and have that for phones and desktop. So I'm going to do a little demo, hopefully, of the time machine. That is a time machine, but I want to show you something else. Will it let me? Cool. Oh yeah, if you want to check it out for yourself, you can go to timemachine.love. And when you're logged in, you're going to see a screen like this. And so we asked people to check in on their wellness. How are you feeling today? So this is your physical health. I'm going to leave that at neutral because I'm shaking a little bit. So we're going to just give that a, let's see, where's my button? There we go. How's my emotional health? Feeling great to be here with everybody today. How's my spirit? Awesome to be here with everyone. How's my hope? 100%. Let's go. Hopeful for the future. Okay, so that's the first step. And lots of people said this alone was a beautiful thing to them, to have someone checking in with them and for them to think about, how am I doing today? And it also helped kind of prime them for the next step, which was thinking about not just how do they want it to be today, but how they want to be tomorrow. So you can see here, this is the time machine over here on the right, beautiful, designed by Amber. And it says, listen. Okay, this is a little scary because I don't remember what I recorded, so let's find out. And then we gave a message. See if you can love yourself while you listen. So a lot of this is about self-love, talking to yourself with love. And a lot of people said this was the hardest part for them, was even learning how to say nice things to themselves, right? And when you think about that, right, I mean, we're getting all these messages. You're not good enough. You're not perfect. Why don't you have the right skin tone? Why don't you have the right skin dryness or wetness or whatever you're supposed to have? All right, so here we go. If it's too scary, I'm going to stop it.
My tomorrow self is enjoying a nice talk with Julia after having a nice, relaxing night's sleep and eating a healthy breakfast, and is preparing to go see Sarah and Jojo and John and have a nice relaxing evening with them. So yeah, my tomorrow self is going to have a pretty great day.
Awesome. So you get a little prompt. So you can choose, do you want to save this message forever? I don't need to do that since it was so specific to that day. But now the time machine says record. So you can record a new message, and it gives you a prompt. So that's how I got one. This was mine. It used to, I said, surprise me, but I was overruled by UX. Then it gives you instructions to read the question, not get too hung up on it. So this question is, who would your childhood self like to spend less time with? My sister's in the audience, and she knows the answer to this one. But you can press the record button. Of course, you have to allow. I'm not really going to answer this one because it's too mean. But you get a prompt, and it helps you talk to yourself. So again, people were like, I don't know what to say. So we took that feedback and said, okay, we'll give you a prompt to kind of help you out, and you don't have to follow what the prompt says. You can just do whatever you want, and then you say, okay, thank you, and I'm going to keep it, and then boom, I'm a time traveler. Come back tomorrow to receive your message. So I say, okay. And because I'm an advanced time traveler, I get to do other things. So I can go to a meditation tent and do kind of some affirmations or meditations. But what I want to do is go to the Hope Garden. So the Hope Garden, so we talked about moving people's time horizons out. So, once you've recorded a message for the tomorrow self, okay, you get some practice with that, but Hope Garden is more about recording a longer-term hope, right? So it could be, this one says back home is in mine. So as I said, I was overseas, so I could probably harvest that one at this point. And for the talk to have a positive impact. So now you know what my intention was for today. And then you can go to your community garden. And this is an awesome place where you can see other people's hopes. So again, we're helping people. So first you're just thinking about, what do I want for me? The community garden helps you think, oh my gosh, everyone around me has hopes. Everyone around me has intentions. I'm gonna send out some good vibes to everybody. So I'm gonna water the community garden. And I love doing this because it reminds me to just send out good vibes to everyone out there having their hopes. So yeah, these were the backup slides if I couldn't show you the live one. And the one on the right there is called the Hope Insight. So that shows you kind of your timeline of all those things. I showed those wellness checks. It shows you the timeline for that. And that again was a user requested feature. And I did want to just point this out. When you're making those hopes, it says name your hope. So again, it's just like a little tiny powerful message of like, name your hope, verbalize it, and then give it an avatar to make it real in the world. Okay, so I'm not going to explain all this data. Julia could if you want to ask her about it later. But the important thing to know about the data is that users did experience significant, measurable increases in well-being. This was a clinical study. They had to go fill out surveys, and we published the results in a peer-reviewed research paper in Frontiers in Psychology. I was a co-author on that. I did the qualitative analysis, not the quantitative, looking at 500 pieces of data that we got from people weighing in on what it meant to them to use the app. And people literally talked about it changing their lives, healing them from childhood trauma. I mean, you can't wave a magic wand, but they felt healing had occurred with the ability to talk gently and lovingly to their childhood self. So the notion is, if you can speak lovingly to your childhood self and feel like maybe I was a presence to that childhood self that felt a presence. I remember that feeling of being at rock bottom in my teen years at one point and suddenly feeling a presence. And some people would say that's an angel or something like that. But this technology has made me think maybe it was me, right? Maybe I was that positive force coming and talking to myself. And then once you kind of open yourself to that notion, then the idea that your future self could be doing the same thing for you just suddenly feels like, sure, why wouldn't my future self want to be doing that? So that is where we're at now. We are continuing to add more little features to the app as we hear from people. I've been talking to people here at the conference about it, and they want not just to water the Hope Garden, but they want to send voice messages. So please, KJ, put it in the queue. They want to add voice messages to offer support to other people's hopes. So that's where we ended. And as Josh mentioned, he did not perform any quantitative analysis. He sent his app out into the world in a different kind of experiment of, let's see what happens.
Yeah. So we were a little avant-garde with it. We kind of ride the line between art, science, experimental, just fringe technology. It's kind of easier to say in the beginning what we don't have in common, and that is the data, because we went viral so fast. We didn't really want to handle millions of people's data without doing it safely and correctly, and with all these laws and stuff about handling people's metadata. So we just did not collect data for about the first year. But now we are collecting anonymized data and have begun to have the ability to kind of analyze these trips. But although we were different, the intentions were much the same. So from the beginning, the Phaeton project, which was what Randonauts it was based on, that has been around for about a decade now, which was a bunch of small people, a bunch of small hobbyists. They really were messing with time, and their intention was for it to be a time travel experiment. So Randonauts has always been a time travel kind of experiment. That's one of the ways we have in common. And another very, very important intention that was behind our app was finding the cure to despair. Like, we wanted to allow people to feel kind of some personal agency. Like you were saying, like after incarceration or addiction, you feel less of a ability to change your future. And we wanted to inject some randomness into people's lives so that they could feel some agency to create new loops and behaviors and possibly create wellness. We've had a lot of anecdotal reports about dealing with grief in particular, when people go to places that they had past traumas, or like their grandma died there and they go to a place completely detached from the causality that brought them there in the first place that caused the trauma. I've heard many anecdotal reports about people kind of healing from grief just from going to a random place. So that's a big way we have in common.
Yeah, I forgot to mention in the in that qualitative and quantitative data, so specifically the quantitative data, one of the great things we found was people that had trauma in their lives actually kind of leapfrogged to catch up in terms of wellness levels. From the beginning of the experiment to the end of the experiment, they actually had the most benefit from using the technology, and that was what was exciting to me, was like seeing, like, here, we put something together in a course of months or whatever, both of us, and seeing it have this positive impact in the world. And yeah, I mean, you said, let's make it possible to increase what's possible. Like, I love that idea of getting people out of their everyday mentality and trying something new and looking at higher consciousness. And I think that's where we have a lot of overlap.
Definitely. And so, like, this is a way that, although we weren't collecting data and we were kind of just like, okay, here's this technology, use it however you want, and people started doing dangerous things with it, like going to railroad yards. We had the Federal Railroad Commission on us, and we have an FBI file from that probably. But so we created the 9 tenets of randonauting, which is like seeing in the dark, which is what an owl does. It's basically like going to places that you never knew existed, that may be right around the corner. Venture mindfully, so practice situational awareness to increase safety. Be sincere, because if you're going to go on a real randonaut trip, if you're just making it up, it's not really randonauting. It's a simulation of randonauting. But so it's very important to be sincere and have high vibes intent. So we don't want people having bad intent or malintent. We want people who want to be surprised or find something beautiful or something mind-blowing that changes their life. And valuing inner life, I said that earlier. Like, I think one of the problems of my generation, as I've noticed it, is that people feel like their lives are meaningless and they are searching for any kind of meaning. And randonauting kind of, for a lot of people, allowed them to kind of go on this hero's journey. And it's like, when you go to a random place, wherever you go, there you are, and it kind of allows you to increase your perspective on reality and kind of increase your frame of reference of like who you are, where you are at in life. And so that's about valuing inner life and a lot of synchronicities. And that's usually we would kind of just throw away. We kind of wanted to Trojan horse synchronicity and like inner life kind of stuff into middle America. That was one of our intentions. So another one was bridge cultural gaps. So this is actually, there's a lot of psychedelic talks, and I have no opinion about psychedelics, but randonauting is a way to kind of experience sort of the similar thing as psychedelics, because you're breaking thresholds and you're going to places that you've never been to before. So you're breaking thresholds, you're bridging cultural gaps. And so in that neuroscience study there, they showed that it increases neuroplasticity when you go to random places and novel places. So I think that's kind of cool. So you can go randonauting instead of doing drugs. I like that. And transform and shift. So it's like this idea that not just the trips, but also integrating what you've learned with the community that allows some kind of transformation for yourself and for others. And that really kind of runs on its own. I don't really have anything to do with it. It's like just the community kind of helps each other out, like because people go through these dark nights of the soul, and sometimes, random places can take you to somewhere that poses a difficult question, and people have, trouble integrating that. So I think there's still work to be done as far as integrating these experiences, but that's one of the cool things. And then bring a trash bag, of course, pick up trash, and then synchronicity, as I mentioned earlier. So the intentions behind creating Randonauts, I've mentioned already, is to break out of the stasis field, to inspire hope, and to experiment with this fringe technology of mind-machine interaction, mind-matter interaction. So it's always a time travel experiment. The best hypothesis we have is the Asher-Paris paradox. You can look that up on, just Google it. It's a paper. Basically, it's quantum steering into the past. And it's this idea of double causality. And Philippe, I'm probably going to butcher his name, Philippe Guimond has a book called Road of Time that talks about this idea of double causality. So that something in the future may be influencing something in the past, or vice versa. And so as we, do these little experiments, these are really very basic experiments. They're very rudimentary. And so it led us to the question of what is the future of Jedi Tech. So Polly, could you tell us what you think?
I would be happy to.
Um,
So yeah, I mean, this is what you came to talk about or hear about, discuss. So yeah, I mean, to us, this is about, it's not about the technology, right? It's not about whether you're using a quantum computer or blockchain or, whatever you're doing. It's about what are you creating, and we want to create deeper, more interesting experiences that do have a connection to the real world. Both of our apps involve that. Back to my theme of elevation, elevating users spiritually, emotionally, physically, socially, being intentional as creators about what are we creating, and looking at community and collaboration. So not just multiplayer, but are we creating community, and are we letting the users use intention and intent as part of their gameplay, and of course harnessing the Force. So yeah, I mean, we can't have a Jedi talk without talking about harnessing the Force. What does that mean to you?
So harnessing the Force to me, with curiosity and play, like for me, if I'm going to build a team, I'm not going to base it on ideas. I'm going to base it on the people and what they're capable of, and kind of, not have maybe an idea of what we're going to create, but really just put people together who have a shared interest and shared passion, and are going to have fun hacking away at this project. That's like my real secret sauce, I think, is that everybody who was involved with creating Randonautica was having fun while they were making it. And so I think that bleeds over into the user experience when your developers are actually having fun creating what they're making.
Okay, well, I'm going to harness my inner 12-year-old Jedi and say, I actually want side training, remote viewing, sharing thoughts without words, creating images and color and music with our minds or our fingers and our bodies. I think we're on the verge of being able to do a lot of that actually already. If not, I mean, there are people already running experiments with all of this, but I've seen demos just being here. Certainly with our fingers, we can do some of this stuff. And by 2050, we'll have 28 more years of research and development into this, so I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be able to just create a whole synesthetic concert basically with my mind, or slight bopping of my head or whatever. But again, this comes down to what we choose to create, right? So John and Yoko up there are saying war is over, and I don't know if you remember the fine print, if you want it, right? So let's think about that in our current moment in time, if you want it. So that's what it comes down to. So again, it's not about the technology. It's not, that's I'm sure you've been to plenty of discussions here about specific technologies or whatever, but everyone in this room gets to decide what the future of apps and games looks like. And, you can see our little, what would you call that?
A schematic, maybe?
Schematic, very nice. Want to read through a couple?
Well, yeah, fear to peace. And a lot of these are like dichotomies that I think that, this is just my personal opinion, I think that instead of like good and bad, we need to start thinking of more nuanced dichotomies between like, consent and non-consent, violence and peace, destruction and creation. And if you think about things with those dichotomies, I think it would help a lot. Like Polly said, I think doing games that involve side training. How many people here meditate? Anybody? Or how many people here do jobs that require extended focus? So if you do any of those things, you'll be able to influence a random number generator probably better than most people. And what you're really doing is you're training yourself to be lucky. You're by influencing probabilities. So this is like really harnessing the force, basically, is influencing probabilities and becoming lucky. So it has to do with some kind of quantum mechanics people haven't figured out yet. There is no working theory. I'm not saying that there is, but this is like the hypothesis, basically. And I have seen people who have trained in psi, and they can make that graph move very well. So I've seen anecdotally some interesting results that just make my mind kind of, I can't not want to put that in front of a bunch of people. So, yeah. And another thing is that, like you were saying, the tech is already kind of here, and like it's just very rudimentary. So like to build the Jedi future, we're just gonna have to work with what we already have, and it's already here if you actually kind of just spend your time looking at it and in researching it. It's already here for remote viewing, which Randonautica would be called a practical remote viewing app by a lot of people. So yeah, the tech is here, but the culture needs to catch up. So that's a lot of work we have to do. This is a good one. Polly likes this one.
Polly came up with this one. One of my favorite movies, not in the Star Wars canon, Groundhog Day. And in this scene, so Andy McDowell's character is talking to Bill Murray, and she's kind of starting to wrap her mind around, like, maybe this guy has been around for dozens of years, if not longer. And he's showing her his amazing thing he's accomplished in dozens of years. He's throwing cards into a hat. This is what he's accomplished with everything he has at his disposal. And she asks him, is this what you do with eternity? And I feel like this is kind of my question to the, no offense, white males who have been running technology up to now. This is what you've been able to accomplish. This is what we've made happen with all of our technology. And stepping into VR booths and I'm greeted with like a horror movie, or let's make it more realistic to kill people. Like, no, that's not what I want, right? I want to like fly through the universe. I want to swim under the water. I want to, I've met a lot of citizen scientists and NASA folks this week, and it should totally be possible for us to use technology to be searching the universe instead of searching a fake universe. Like, search our actual universe, and use our time in a VR headset or on our phones or whatever, and use the technology to do something that helps. I even have in my head, I have no idea if it's possible, but like, could we search someone's bloodstream for cancer cells and go hug them out? Hug it. That kind of thing. Like, it seems like let's get really creative with how we use technology, and let's get more people in on the technology to help more people learn how to use it, so that more people can be bringing more ideas, further out their ideas to what the future of games and apps looks like.
Yeah, and I think when you're building a community around a piece of technology, what really helped me anyway was just radical openness. And do not hoard your research. Be open with your research. So everything that we found and we researched, we would share with everybody. Now, a couple people came into our rooms, and then the corporations they were looking for later published a couple patents, whatever. From sharing that research, we got so much help, and just, a lot of people were attracted to the development team just because we were so open with our research. And so I think that's a really good thing to do if you're trying to build a community around a piece of tech. So we have this quote here by...
They say it's about human potential. I don't know if you can...
Yeah, I can read it. I think that we will upgrade ourselves into something completely different. Humans are going to acquire abilities that were traditionally thought to be divine abilities. Humans may soon be able to live indefinitely, to design and create living beings at will, to surf artificial realities directly with their minds, and to change their own bodies and minds according to their wishes. The most amazing thing about the future won't be the spaceships, but the beings flying them. So yeah, I think we're already kind of at the beginning stages of that. What do you think, Polly?
Yes. No, I mean, this was more to point to the fact, like, yes, I mean, we might sound crazy in a little bit, but I think there's other people out there thinking about these things. Obviously, being here this week, you've heard maybe more outlandish things than even what we're talking about here, or not. I mean, our hope would be that maybe we're more outlandish than some folks. But I mean, I think what we're getting at here is like, how do we connect people, right? So there's all these people thinking these amazing ideas, and there's a bunch of techies who are like can make these ideas come into play. There's artists making beautiful things. The one in the middle is just from last night at the Wisdome. Yeah. If you haven't been to it, highly recommend. The one in the lower left is kind of a mind stimulator. It literally like vibrates your motor cortex. So like, how do we bring together people with cool ideas and the technologists to bring them to life and create, that's what's going to be needed to get to our Jedi Tech.
Yeah, and Connecting with a Coincidence is a good podcast with Dr. Bernie Bateman, and he has a community just around coincidence. And the University of, I don't even know how to say that, Groningen, they ran a test where they used a quantum random number generator and just gave people random numbers, and over 51% of them found meaning in those numbers, even though they were completely random. So that's just an interesting anecdote as well, but that was an actual study. So Scott Wilbur, who is known for inventing the pulse oximeter, which we've all become accustomed to, I think, during this last pandemic, he actually is involved with mind-matter interaction, or as I would like to call it, like mind-mind interaction. If all is mind, I want a new word besides mind-matter interaction, because mind-matter interaction just kind of enforces this Cartesian dualism that we're trying to get rid of in the first place. So anyway, they use this technology of being able to use your intention to influence randomness to get information you wouldn't have otherwise had otherwise known as like remote viewing, and they used it to win the lottery. So he won a 3-ball lottery. And there's a hands-free control interface where you can see that he created something that uses your mind to control an interface or flip a switch or type on a laptop or a keyboard, yeah, so there's definitely people out there who are doing these things. If you go to Core Invention, you can read his papers.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
There you go.
That was it.
All right. So yeah, again, this just comes back to how do we build community? Who wants to be building these kind of cool things? How do we get together? How do we find out what happens when we open technology to more people? Game technology is really complicated, and VR technology adds a whole other level on top of it. So you need a team. It's not something you're going to sit there and do all by yourself. Maybe you could. Maybe there's
you're
awesome
Superman
indie developers out there.
There's rock stars.
Love them. But yeah, what characters and stories and worlds can we tell if we open this technology up to more people?
Right, and let's see what I have on my notes. Like I already said, radical openness really helps people, trust in your group, and they don't think they're kind of being shafted out of some knowledge. Like, they're more likely to participate if you're radically honest. And I really want to get this across to people, so I'm going to be very direct. And it's, if you have a small group of hobbyists who are just your friends and you're hacking away at a project, never doubt for a second that you cannot influence the world and influence culture. Because me and my friends who are located internationally, just a handful of us, took 20 million people and touched their lives, and we're in over 151 countries. So that's like most countries, I just found out. So that's
whatever 150 over 183 is.
Yeah, whatever 150 over 183 is. So we have communities in all of those countries, and it actually happened on July 4th that Russians and people from Mexico all found Randonautica on July 4th, and so our chat room was just full of thousands of people talking in Spanish and Russian. And so it's like, how do you deal with a community when you don't even speak the languages that now the majority of your user base is speaking? So that's an interesting problem, a good problem, I think, to have. But yeah, I really want to get that point across, is if you have a small group of friends and you have a project that you believe in and you have fun hacking on, do not doubt for a second that you cannot change the world with it.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to go to our final
Yeah.
queries.
So who has a project? What do you want to work on building now?
Yeah, so we wanted to leave plenty of time for there to be discussion and hear from you, like what you're working on, what you want to be working on, what you wish someone else was working on. And I don't know why that last one was there. I guess I have a big hang up about the word virtual reality.
Yeah.
I love extended reality because it means like better than reality, right? Whereas like virtual reality seems like it has some it's not quite right. So I guess that was at one point important to me to ask that question. But really, what I'm most interested in is what's important or interesting or exciting to people here, or questions for us is also welcome.
Yeah, buddy. Well, I have a question for you, Polly. So what are you going to work on?
Ooh. Well, I am actually going to work with the Institute of Love and Time on a project that will deal, again, with a timeline and hopefully do some of the stuff you were talking about in terms of doing an experiment to see if we can influence the past.
Yeah.
But I also
cool.
have project ideas of my own, very inspired this week from what I've seen here in terms of, as I said, like flying through space. I have some more concrete ideas
Yeah.
about how to make that happen now.
Yeah, definitely pre-South by Southwest, Polly and Josh, and post-South by Southwest, Polly and Josh will probably have completely different kind of directions and aims. Right now, my projects that I'm working on are in stealth, but I will say that they do include raising consciousness and using the act of play to raise consciousness and increase hope and make people value their inner lives. Similar thing, but just a different kind of platform, just through a game. And I think what the future will be something like you walk in your house and the lights turn on because you thought, oh, I'm walking in my house, the lights need to turn on. I really think that's going to be possible because I've seen someone make a switch where they turn something on with their mind. What happens to the natural non-virtual world? So yeah, what happens to the natural non-virtual world once everything is VR?
We won't let everything be VR.
Well, I was having this conversation, so I saw the Megan Thee Stallion VR experience, which was cool.
Known climate scientist Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah, it was cool, but what jarred me was that there was no imperfections in it. It was all perfect. And so even though nature loves symmetry and stuff, like, there's still always a slight little imperfection. Like, my wife, my loving wife, the woman behind Randonauts, she likes to say no two eyebrows are the same because she's an esthetician and she waxes eyebrows. So, I would like to see in virtual worlds for people to have uneven eyebrows because, code that in. Don't make them perfectly symmetrical. It looks like we have some questions.
Hey, I wanted to ask you guys, particularly Josh, to explain what you think is happening in Randonautica.
Okay.
So I have two theories in my own head.
Okay.
They may both be wrong. So
Give me your theories.
yeah, so is it that when you use Randonautica, the intention that you have affects the random number generator that gives you your spot? Or is it the reverse? That the fact that your random number generator 3 seconds in the future is going to give you a spot affects your intention. Do
That's a
you
really
get
good
my
question.
point? Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
I do not have an answer for that. I do not know. But we are looking at like the timing of when you set your intention and when the randomness is actually generated. So that's actually something we're actually experimenting with. And our effect size is actually very, very small. So you may, the rule of thumb is to go on 3 Randonaut trips. So if anyone wants to download Randonautica, just give me your email if you want, and I'll tell my project manager to hook you up with premium stuff or whatever. But yeah, you can find our info on here. My Twitter, my Insta, my email, it's all Joshua Lengfelder. So, and Polly is at Codicia.
We have another question.
Another question, brilliant.
Yes, thank you for coming. I had no idea what Randonautica was, and it sounds kind of insane. Question I have for you is I wonder if you guys have heard, I came kind of fashionably late, sorry, but I wonder if you guys went into the idea of like randomness as a therapy kind of thing, and in terms of like I'm referring to like specifically the Cacophony Society's zone trip thing in San Francisco where they would take people to random locations and they would have to like feel their way through what's going on.
I'm familiar with the Cacophony Society and their idea of zones. Yeah, that's a good little link you made there.
Oh, it's in the archives, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're on the right. Yeah, you have the right idea of kind of what the idea is behind that. So yeah, you don't have to use the app at all. Actually, you can just use your mind. The app just kind of like acts as a biofeedback device to like kind of let you go through these steps to find an interesting place. But there was the derive with the letterists and the situationists where they would just walk across the city in a straight line and not be deterred by the city streets and how they went. And yeah.
You're throwing a dart at a map.
Yeah, the old throwing.
That's how I travel.
That I love that. I love that. So did you have anything else?
No, it sounds. But I guess the therapy of it would be. Like
yeah, I'm
known.
very interested in that, and that aspect. Like I mentioned earlier, the grief is the one I would target first, is because that's the one I've heard the most. I mean, I get messages all the time. People are like, "Oh, you changed the way I look at the world," I get that almost every day. But just changing the way you look at the world isn't necessarily healing, but changing the way you look at your own grief, that could be healing. So I think that's probably the softest target is looking at grief as far as random locations are concerned.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Hey guys. So you mentioned that the tech is already there and culture is the one that needs to catch up. And I really firmly believe that that's true. Besides the obvious people, and hopefully the non-obvious already, but besides the obvious people who are attracted to this kind of mindset and come to your talk or engage with your platforms, how do you think that you can attract the people who are, you know, on the tech or the dark side or the whatever?
What's your answer?
I think that's a great question, right? I think that's where we are at right now is figuring out. I mean, Josh's app obviously grabbed a bunch of people from around the world who were interested in thinking about things differently. And our UX designer Amber, has mentioned like TikTok is full of people who are like trying different things, talking about different things. I do feel like the younger generations are like trying to open their minds to like what's possible. We want the world to be different than it is. And again, I mean, that is every generation wants the world to be different than it is for them. But I do feel there is an openness that's happening. And, I don't think it's something that can be forced. I think it's something like, for me, it's about like, let's have fun and have a big party, and like everyone wants to come to your party, right? I mean, like make it something fun and interesting. And in terms of building the technology, to me, I also want to make that fun and interesting, because I think a lot of people are like, it's too hard, right? So we need to make things easier. And again, we need to build teams and networks where people can learn how to use it. In terms of creating the technology, I think in terms of using it, it's a question of making it fun. And I mean, look at meditation apps, like they're through the roof, right? I mean, zillions, I think that's the technical number. Zillions of people are using those. So I do think there is a culture shift that's already happening. But do you have ideas of how to get people interested?
Didn't see that one coming. Well, I mean, no, I don't. I'd have to think about it. But I mean, I think already the fact that we obviously talk about, I think the radical openness is something that caught my attention. I think in my experience, it took me a while, and it still is taking time for me to speak my mind, even if it's against, someone's way of thinking or way of behaving. And I think just holding yourself responsible to speak your mind and be radically transparent and open to what you think, and challenge those people that may think otherwise and don't think about it as a negative, but as an opportunity, I guess, which then creates conversations. And to your point, maybe it's going to be something that's a natural, longer term solution or movement.
And I think not being scared of the word spirituality. Like, I'm the only person I've heard this entire week mention her spirituality. Like,
Exactly.
I think being open to that. We have time for probably one or two more, depending on how.
Well, I
fast
would
they
just
are.
say that you're on the right track with just those questions. I would say I don't even have to answer them. You're on the right track just thinking that way. And I would say it's the artists that are the ones that are going to change culture. And you're just on the right track already. So I don't even need to answer the question. Yeah.
First of all, thank you. This is mind-blowing. I just wanted you to talk quickly about the quantum aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm nerding on it, and I just want to make sure I'm nerding on the right thing.
Yeah.
And then as you talk about it, one of the things that I worry about when things like what you did become so big, and something like time travel becomes big,
Right.
is I remember when Clubhouse was launched, and I loved drinking the third drink, switching the Clubhouse on, and just randomly going into a room.
Right.
And it was great. And having strangers talk about weird stuff and being able to interact with them. And then people decided to curate it, and it became really boring.
Yep.
And TikTok was random, and it was awesome. And then people decided to curate it, and became really boring. How can we not curate randomness?
I have the same question as you, and thank you. And it's a very good question. I have the same question as you, and I was warned by someone, Joseph Matheny, who did this thing that included what he called randomicity. You may have heard of Ong's hat. It was a thing in the 90s where he was basically doing what we're doing in a different way. Ours is much more hopeful anyway. But he warned me that there would just be a certain point where you would just get overrun. So basically what happens is you have an esoteric culture in your community that understands the core beliefs that the originators created, and then there's an exoteric one where people are just going to be confused and believe the first YouTube video that they see cross their eyes. So yeah, that's still a problem that I have yet to, but it started for us around a million users when things like the original culture couldn't propagate fast enough to take over what was propagating on YouTube and TikTok, which was something completely different.
Yeah. So we're at the end of our official time, I'm being told, but we're happy to continue conversation. Is there one right after us? No, so we won't be interrupting anyone, but we can also go out. But
One more question, please.
Just a quick one. I was interested to know that what would your response be to someone who said that, so in these coincidences and meanings that people find, some people could argue that, humans are always looking to find meanings, henceforth religions or spirituality, whatever. Is that happening here? And what would your response be to that?
Yeah, my response would be like our effect size is probably less than 5%. So less than 5% of trips are probably, it even works. Whatever it is, I don't even know. But I think you're right, and people are built for creating meaning out of nothing. So the whole pareidolia thing or whatever, seeing something in just a random drawing and you see a face or something, that's totally an element, and a lot of the trips are that. And but there are some that are just a little too weird for it to be a coincidence. Like on February 2nd, I went randonauting, and it took me to Virgin de Candelaria Botanica shop, and my project manager was in where were you in Spain? Where's that? The Canary Islands is where he is. Canary Islands, and he was actually walking in. It was actually her feast day. The Virgin de Candelaria. It was actually her feast day, and he was in the Canary Islands in Candelaria, and he walked her procession. So it's just like levels of synchronicity that are a little too weird, that even if it is just creating meaning out of nothing, that still scratches the itch of the existential investigator. So whether it's quantum magic or not, it still produces these effects that are interesting. That's basically my answer. So thank you guys, especially everybody who asked questions, and everybody who made this possible. Julia, thank you so much. And I would like to thank my darling wife, Shelby.